Hi everyone. Today we will be presenting our final project on Nike in our Global Strategic Management course. And I am Peyton Proffitt, and my other group members are Max Moore, John O'Hara, Sammy Thompson, and Erin Liebe. And to start, we wanted to talk about the strategic issues that Nike faces. So throughout the course of evaluating Nike, we decided that three stood out the most. First, interest rates and inflation are a large determinant of the company's structure because the cost of borrowing increases, which then limits Nike's ability to invest and forces product costs up for consumers. And then next, societal standards have changed the way Nike leads the industry and thus their processes. Although costly, it is necessary that the company focuses on efforts in labor conditions, gender equity in the workplace, and sustainability. And then lastly, counterfeit products are a big concern for Nike as they threaten the brand image and their revenue abilities. So as production for consumers and replication becomes easier, it is more difficult to regulate these issues. And moving on, we then look at the pestle framework in our external analysis. So we will discuss the most critical pieces of our external analysis here. And after analyzing the framework, we concluded that economic, social, and technological factors impact Nike the most in the current state of today's global society. And in the aftermath of the pandemic and the recession environment we see today, interest rates have risen and inflation is up. And this creates rising costs in the supply chain and for consumer products in turn. And at the same time, the consumers will have less ability to spend. And then next, there has also been a rise in the athleisure wear to stay at home work. And since that has come into effect, there's more competition for luxury brands, and Nike competes with them. So, as a leader in the industry, Nike has been tasked to conform to labor standards, and they need to take into account ethical obligations as well as just the laws in place. And then technological factors urge Nike to invest and continue automation in manufacturing and marketing methods. So moving on to our next external analysis, we look at Porter's 5 forces and the industry factors. So we see interfirm rivalry that is driven by aggressive marketing and competition for luxury items. And in addition, the power of buyers is a key driver as consumer price sensitivity determines how profitable Nike products will be. And both of these affect Nike and are due to strategic issues of inflation and the societal standards that we just discussed. So moving on.
Now we'll analyze the firm internally, and in doing so, we've identified numerous sustainable competitive advantages. So this means that these are resources or capabilities that are considered valuable, rare, costly to imitate, and organized to capture value. And many of these advantages come from Nike's leadership in the industry, such as their global supply chain network and their esteemed reputation and iconic sponsorships with athletes such as Cristiano Ronaldo. So after being in the industry for so many years, this has come with their precedent and with their good brand recognition. But then there are also some areas to improve, however, and these areas are missing one of the key VRIO attributes. So for Nike, most of these resources are valuable, but they primarily fall short in one of two ways. Either they're not costly to imitate or they are not rare. So retailers at their headquarters and their workforce fall in the first category because they're very easily replaceable, even by people that are or firms that are just starting out in the industry. Whereas Nike's extensive advertising network and diverse product catalog, it's not exactly rare or unique to the firm, which also keeps it from becoming a sustainable competitive advantage. So this is something that Nike could consider and look to improve upon in order to capture the value, make it more rare or less imitatable. And then next, as we examine the strengths and weaknesses of Nike, you can see that they have many strengths and opportunities. As we can probably list off the top of our head, they have great marketing, a fabulous supply chain network compared to their competitors, and they have lots of sustainability campaigns, which are a great opportunity for them. But of course, there are also some weaknesses and some threats, such as their many HR scandals, and they have poor labor conditions that are known by the public. And also the rise of counterfeited products is really a huge threat to Nike. So as we examine these characteristics, we're going to look at it through the lens of our 3 strategic issues. So first, under interest rates and inflation, you could see that one of the strengths of Nike is their pricing power, and that's because they're a leader in the industry. But this is also a little bit of a weakness because due to their long-term debt and their dependence on the US economy, their sales really fluctuate with national income and just how the overall macroeconomic climate is doing. Secondly, as we look at their society's ethical standards, Nike is fortunate enough to have very low production costs. However, this is at the expense of their poor labor conditions, which have led to many HR scandals, as there have been documentaries released that are exposing the poor conditions of Nike's factories overseas. And then there have also been more HR scandals in regards to the threat of kangaroo leather. There are kangaroo leather cleats that are very popular in football and soccer. However, like for many of their supplies, like their cleats, however, many people are against this, and Nike is a key producer of these products that have been popular for many years. So they're kind of faced with the threat of whether they're going to let go of this luxurious product in an effort towards like showing their sustainable mindset, or hanging on to it because it's bringing in some income and it's been around for many years and is part of their product catalog. And then third, as we look at the rise of counterfeiting products and how that affects Nike's brand image, obviously their brand awareness and their many collaborations with celebrities and professional athletes lead many people to want to counterfeit these products because they know and love the brand of Nike. So this is a weakness because their logo, the Nike swoosh, is also very replicable, and many of their product designs are released to the public, and so they can easily imitate them. So obviously the threat that Peyton touched on before about the rise in counterfeiting items, especially with new technology on the rise, could be a big detriment to Nike, but it's also closely tied to their strength of how many people know and love the brand Nike. So it's working for and against them.
So I'll be going over the strategic recommendations that our group came up from the previous analysis that Peyton and Erin went over. So the first one that kind of stood out to us as a worthy strategic recommendation was to seek out suppliers and manufacturers that prioritize fair labor standards. So this really aims to resolve the strategic issue number 2 around ethical standards. So in the past, we've seen Nike have 3 separate incidences. One being gender-based harassment, another was forced labor in China, and poverty wages. So we believe by creating a list of requirements for groups that Nike works with, they'll be able to resolve this strategic issue. And we have also seen in the past companies like Adidas and Samsung have similar initiatives that were successful. So our second strategic recommendation is more focused on our strategic issues 1 and 3. And it is greater ownership of production and supply chain, such as factories making costs more predictable and controlled. So one thing we noticed in our analysis of the company was that Nike outsources almost all of its production. And during the pandemic, particularly, we saw that they had weak delivery precision, lower profit margins, and they didn't have the ability to get the products that they needed to the consumers. So we believe by doing this, the company will be able to overcome those strategic issues and sort of shield itself from macroeconomic and geopolitical issues that have hurt its performance in the past.
Then as we think about two different implementation plans, the first being to set stricter global standards for labor conditions. These are a few key steps that Nike could take in order to set stricter global standards and our implementation plan. So the first includes understanding what's really happening on the ground. The best way to do this would be to hire an independent third-party external firm that specializes in auditing labor conditions, including companies like BSR, SES, or Intertech. And sort of based on these findings, then Nike can develop a set of stricter global standards that address the specific issues brought up in that audit. And then the third step, obviously, would be based on those issues, communicating those new standards to all of Nike's global manufacturing partners, and shortly thereafter implementing some sort of a system for monitoring and enforcing compliance with new standards at all of Nike's global manufacturing facilities. So this includes everybody that are sourcing sort of the initial shoelaces where a Nike shoe might come from, all the way up to those that are making the boxes that the finished product ends up going in. This includes regular inspections at all of their manufacturing facilities, as well as specific consequences for addressing non-compliance. This includes suspension or termination of partnership, or possibly some sort of path for Nike's partners to get back to complying. And then finally, some sort of regular review that assesses the effectiveness of these new standards, as well as once every 5 years conducting a third-party audit, similar to the one that we suggested in step number 1. And then our second implementation plan, aimed at taking greater ownership of the supply chain, includes, similar to in our last implementation plan, understanding which key suppliers are critical in Nike's operations and have the actual potential to be integrated into the company. So this includes understanding from a financial sense if acquiring possible partners is even feasible, as well as if we decide some sort of equity partnership is the better path, if we can afford sort of that transaction. The second would be then developing a budget and timeline for acquiring or investing in these very suppliers that we identified as good strategic fits. And at the same time, Nike does have a small pre-existing infrastructure that supports their in-house production. So we also need to make sure that we're investing in those production facilities to make sure that they too are supporting sort of our quest towards better vertical integration. The third is and this is a really critical step in the plan, is developing training and development programs aimed at helping managers and C-suite level executives sort of smooth the transition from relying on sort of third-party producers to now being a vertically integrated company. Step number 4 includes, again, relying on experts, hiring a consulting agency such as McKinsey or Bain to sort of help Nike transition as they have sort of extensive supply chain management expertise as they make the transition from outsourced production to vertical integration. And then 5, a common theme here is making sure that we're regularly reviewing our processes to make sure that they're effective. So this is not too different, right? Regularly monitoring and assessing the success of our new vertical integration model and making the necessary adjustments over time, as they're sure to come in such a big transition for a company that for a very long time has relied on sort of third-party production.
And next, we will look at possible obstacles that Nike face in the implementation of these plans. First is that of ineffective change management. Having that aren't skilled change leaders can negatively impact the implementation from the start. Thus, it is important for Nike to take into account leaders and the utilization of talent. Another obstacle would include distractions by unforeseen events such as COVID or political unrest as a possible obstacle that Nike needs to take into account due to the global footprint it has around the world. Another one includes lengthy audits from both internal and external consultants, which could cause timeline disruptions for implementing these plans and also cause further disruptions down the road too. And finally is that of change resistance, which is a giant obstacle that Nike has already seen as it has had many opportunities for changes in these strategic issues. Change resistance could also come against studies that are made by consultants, thus leaving Nike in a stalemate. And so next, we'll go over the key assumptions that we've kept in place throughout our case study of Nike. These include Nike's ease of integration of the supply chain, even with facilities being located in geopolitical hotspots such as China. Also, the lasting effects of the recession globally, such as inflation, which has been running rampant across many different countries around the world. And then also the labor force remaining strong in global production locations, such as China, which has seen a lot of unrest recently, such as Apple strikes going on. And then Nike's competitors not aligning as a comparable dominant firm in athletic wear and accessory space is also another key assumption. And with that, thank you for joining us for our presentation on Nike, and hope you enjoyed it.